Hello, 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 beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the USL show. Not to be confused with the Miami FC, of course. Which are they dead? Are they officially dead? They're playing Sacramento. They're probably dead.
They're in the playoffs right now.
They're
They've won 4 straight games. They're living.
they might be alive.
They could be alive. It's like that scene off of The Incredibles of "We're dead, we're alive, we're alive, but we're dead." That whole thing.
Call an ambulance, but not for Miami.
Look, a lot of stuff to talk about today. But serious note, it is Mental Health Awareness Day. Just I don't know if it's just the U.S. or around the globe, but wherever it is, take time for yourself. Take time to love yourself, and hey, never be afraid to reach out to someone. It's not embarrassing. The worst thing that happens is that you get a little laugh because you feel like your problems are like ridiculous, and then somebody will say, I'm struggling with the same thing. It's not ridiculous. It's the worst thing that happens. Just reach out to someone, talk to somebody. You're not too grown, too manly or whatever. Like we see our breakdowns of who listens. It's mostly guys, if we're being honest. And like, you're not too manly. It's okay. Just go talk to someone. We've all dealt with it. You're good. Don't worry about it. So, yeah. John, how are you?
Doing well. Love that note. Yeah, just echo everything you said there. Like, if you're going through something, talk to somebody about it. You would be surprised how willing almost anyone in your life is to listen to you and to hear you out. And that support is everything. So, start off with some positivity here.
Yeah. Positivity. I mean, I'm seeing a Liverpool hat. Are we alive? Are we good? Or
It's better than thinking about my other team at the moment, so I'm sure we'll get onto that a little bit later. But no, I won't make the flippant mental health joke regarding my current sports fandom. But no, I echo these guys' sentiments, and it is one of those things that sometimes once you talk through something, it feels like some of the weight can lift. So definitely give yourself the opportunity if you're feeling that weight, because we all have those moments. Great call out, Kaylor. And I think a good start to what should hopefully be a fun show discussing the business end of the USL season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot going on. We have Player Shield. Thank you, Nicholas Murray, for calling us out on. It's a Player Shield, not a Supporter Shield. That's for the other league. And that happened. Pittsburgh got that, which that picture of Happy Bob Lilly that was posted by Nicholas Murray cracks me up. Never seen him smile like that before, which, I wanted to see the duality of man post of that screenshot. And then that also him like slamming the chair in Louisville. I wanted to see a duality of man post. Never came, but it's okay. But that happened. Only 2 more teams that do not know their fate in League One. You have your Forward Madison, you have your Tormenta, the Battle of the Birds for the final playoff spot. And I mean, who would have thought that we were still talking about Tormenta, or even talking about, Forward Madison not locking up a spot yet? It felt like we kind of knew what was going to happen a few weeks in, and we are so wrong, and just so much happening right now.
There was a point in time where we felt really solid about Madison, and we'll touch on League One a bit later, but boy, and I feel like they've not even been bad necessarily. Like, it's a lot of draws, it's a lot of inconsistency without ever losing a bunch of games in a row. I mean, I don't know, just tough for them. I hope to see them get in, as mean as that might be if you're a Tormenta fan.
The Madison's brand of inconsistency has felt less intense than Tormenta's this season. So maybe that's why we give them a pass. And obviously Tormenta's drop off from what was an unbelievable year last year. They just haven't found that spark in quite the same way, haven't found the consistency, especially defensively. It comes down now to a little bit of a shootout for a playoff spot, which for the league, for the neutral, you love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I mean, I think if you're Tormenta, you don't want to go from champion to missing the playoffs in 1 year, obviously, but you do have a championship to kind of build your hat on and say, well, because Isaiah Sterling was hurt for a lot of the year, and we're still figuring out our defense. And hey, we got that ring, rings, it's fine. Rings, Ernie. You can kind of do that if you're Ford Madison building your best team that you've ever had. A goalkeeper who was Golden Glove consideration for a long time. Cheney, who's been scoring for goals for fun at times and missed the playoffs after finally having the team that you were saying more wins than Kits, and you missed the playoffs anyway. You have to be down bad. But,
you hit the nail on the head on all fronts there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about what Andy said real fast, and it was, hey, City of Irvine, we're going to be getting Orange County in their stadium for 5 years. Get out of here, Los Dos. We don't want you anymore. And hey, Orange County having a for sure home for the next 5 years. After what we were looking at last year when we talked to Dan, it almost felt like they were fighting for their club's life to getting essentially a 5-year security plan. It was like a massive turn within 1 calendar year, and could not be more excited for Orange County fans.
I mean, we've seen in terms of what's gone on in the league, both with Loyal, obviously there's a lot more going on there, maybe, beyond stadium stuff, but with teams that struggle to continue operations, stadium ownership, stadium right, like leasing rights, all that sort of stuff is like the number one issue in most of these situations where teams cease operations. So for me, 5 years for a USL side that has been doing business really well on the player operation side, like you basically can't fault anything that Orange County has done over the last few years. Obviously, product on the pitch last year was suffered to a high degree. They've obviously figured that out to a decent extent, and they are obviously back in the playoffs. So the fact that they've now got a little bit of that cushion of they've got 5 years to continue to operate in this stadium, it's a huge win for the club. And seeing in the chat now with Andy with the optional 5-year extension, like the potential to have 10 years of settled of a settled home is, I mean, that's a game changer for any USL club.
Yeah, and Andy mentioned it as well, if you're there in the chat, but they're going to have the ability to maybe negotiate their way into getting money for naming rights, which at this level is a big deal and something that a lot of teams don't have the advantage of even thinking about. It's another testament to the way that Orange County is pretty much a model for this league across the board. And what they did last year to really galvanize the fans, get the boots on the ground for that grassroots campaign, to make it clear that there's a community around this team, and Los Dos, any competitor for that venue, doesn't provide the same thing to the community, to the city of Irvine in particular. Again, just a testament to the way that this club is run. They make all the right decisions. Everyone should be looking at what they're doing and really trying to learn from it.
So people who are watching, I'm going to be hopping in and out a good bit just so you're like, where did Kaylor go? I mean, most of you don't care, but it's fine. Just let you know. Listen, I'm super stoked for Orange County. Just, again, like I mentioned, stability is nice. Stability is nice. And to talk about that stability of having a stadium, I mean, why not look into the Bluegrass State, where the 2 USL teams in Kentucky have their own stadium now, with Lexington officially announcing theirs today with the worst kept secret probably of all time, where they have a piece of land that says, oh, who's that owned by? And they say, oh, Lexington. What are they using it for? Or like Lexington SC, what are they using for? Totally not a stadium. It's not a training ground, but it'll be something. Totally not a stadium. Super excited for them. And just to have, I mean, I think if you were to ask, hey, what's going to be the place in the USL with 2 soccer-specific stadiums? I mean, Kentucky is probably not the one that would come to mind. I mean, you have Texas with two, with San Antonio and RGV, but what? I mean, their own stadium. You're looking at Kentucky and Texas. I mean, that's ridiculous to say, but Lexington's done a good job. They came into the league with a plan. And to be fair, the USL's pushed for that. Hey, if you're going to join our league, you better have a plan. Which now, I mean, maybe we'll get to this conversation a little bit. Maybe they should start pushing for plans from teams that have been in the league for a while, because the old guard is now starting to look like they're the ones, well, falling behind.
Yeah, and just on the Lexington thing, 5,000 seater is what they're doing right off the interstate, going to be very accessible. They're going to end up spending I think upwards of $80 million on the stadium, a whole bunch of training pitches. There's the potential to expand the venue to a capacity above 10,000. It's really what you want to see when you're thinking about these sorts of projects, especially at the League One level, where you get your foot in the door, you grow that fan base, you're investing in youth soccer with that number of fields, clearly. And by the time you've built something up, then you can take the next step and expand that thing out, knowing that you've designed it with that intention in mind. I'm excited about the fact that this was dated in a way that they're going to try to make the first game a USL Women's Super League competition, which, again, just awesome to see what Lexington is doing there. Between this and the Orange County move, I really think this is what you want to see if you're the USL, that the clubs are finding their footing, they're finding stability, they're investing in a way that's going to make this sustainable in the long term.
And I love that the women's game is part of the reason that this project was spurred on at all, because the Super League introduced like these stadium requirements for teams to be able to apply for the, those the ability to enter that competition. So I think that's just like a double benefit too for Lexington, is that the fact that they obviously got started, got operating with their men's team, but now have the ability for their women's team to kind of to operate at this D1 level, and all of what we're going to see in the future from the Super League. Obviously excited for that. The one thing that I will say is, like, this is one of those projects that comes with a lot of, and I would be a total hypocrite if I didn't talk about the funding and the fact that it is sort of vague in how, like, where the 82 million is coming from. They're building off of a site that had already been invested in by the state of Kentucky for like 34 million or something like that. The 82 million, it's like, where's that actually, like, where are we making up 50 million? Is that coming up from the state? Is that coming from investors in Lexington? Because that is a really steep price for League One and the Super League, I would say, like, for ownership at that level. So all that being said, I obviously, like, I have a lot of heartburn when it comes to like public funds for private stadium projects, and that's where this one for me is just like, where's that 82 million come from? I know they're making estimates of something about 50 million being made up in proceeds from use of their youth fields. That feels like an awfully high number for just like youth soccer tournaments, but maybe that is a number that's realistic. Well, I'm not sure. So that's really, for me, the only thing in the room of like, well, the state's involved, city of Lexington, the county, I believe, is also involved in the funding. So like, this is going to be built, I think, largely with public funds, which is the only like downside to the project, in my opinion.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Lexington fans. I thought a part of what was a big draw for the original planning for Lexington SC Stadium was the fact that it was also going to be used for outdoor concerts. It was going to become an outdoor venue. So maybe that's a part of the youth soccer fields, is becoming like outdoor venue area. Like if they want to bring in festivals and stuff like that, which maybe you can say this is more public fund because they are bringing in outdoor things that are not just youth soccer.
Sure.
Which I think that was a big part of the original bidding. I'm with you though on the private use of, or a public use of funds for private use. Which this is a conversation I was having, and I I hate kind of where there's so many things you could say, US sports, whatever. But there is this big thing that we see a lot of US sports. It's like, well, if you're going to build a stadium, the city has to pay for it, right? That's a thing that you see all the time. And it's a part of why, Jerry's World gets called Jerry's World with AT&T Stadium. He put so much of his own money into it, which is why it's as nice as it is. I don't know the exact bank account of every single owner in the USL. If I did, maybe we could have a little bit of dirt on somebody and we could, maybe get this thing paid for. We'll see. I don't know.
I did not think you were going to take it in a blackmail direction.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, if I have the option to have billions of dollars at my expense, why not the blackmail direction? But 99% of the owners, and I'm willing to bet 100% of all ownership groups in the USL could pay for a stadium if they wanted. Your owner saying we don't have enough money is them saying I'm not willing to invest. Yes, it will be a massive hit to their wallet. I'm not saying that it's not. I get that. But we really want to, no, you can put your wallet where your mouth is. What you're saying is I would rather the city pay for half of it and we'll pay the rest of the half. And most of these owners are not just one owner things. They have like a consortium, is that the word? A contingency of owners that can split the bill, but they would like the city to basically take as much of a hit for their wallet as they can. The thing is that these stadiums are not multi-billion dollar, MLB, NFL, NBA stadiums. They're just not. These stadiums are dropping the buckets relative to those big stadiums, which in all reality, you would think that would make it easier for these guys and girls to invest, but they just haven't. And it does rub me the wrong way a little bit.
At the same time, I feel like a lot of these ownership groups aren't billionaires in the same way you see across the board in a lot of other American sports. And when you factor in that a lot of teams in the USL, whether League One or the Championship, are hardly profitable or probably losing money, why would you invest like that? And there's that chicken and the egg problem of build it, they will come, certainly to an extent. It's thorny, but I sort of get it, not to side with the 1%ers, which is something that we tend not to do as a podcast. But yeah,
blackmail. That's why I want to throw that one out there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I see in the chat, if the city and state is willing, then why not? And I get that, and I think the larger point is that it is more so it's often not a voted on thing. It's often a decided thing by elected officials, which I get in direct democracy. That's how this country works. And at the same time, it's often not an issue that people get to have a say on. And it's way more about who are you talking to in government and who's being lobbied and all of those things. And if the owner has the right connections, then it's more likely that these things are going to come off. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's more so about is it ever appropriate for public funds to fund the facilities of private businesses? And that's a larger philosophical argument that is we're probably not going to solve here tonight. So
this was not something that was on our docket to talk about, but it's something I started thinking about. What are we going to do with, and it's off the top. Well, no, this isn't true. I'm going to retract my statement before I said it, but I'm going to go along with it anyway. NWSL and Super League are going to be in the same state in Kentucky, both D1. And not just that, Racing Louisville's 2 team was in the USLW League. There's no way they stick around and share a league with a direct competitor, right?
Lexington's going to be Super League.
Right, but I'm talking about Racing as well, because Racing Louisville is in NWSL. Racing Louisville 2 is in W League, USLW League. There's no way they stick around in the USL, but even
Where would
so,
they play, though? Where would they play? Like, you got to have somewhere for those
I would think maybe
talented
the
players.
VPSL.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things that USL for the first time has created competition to the NWSL. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they go in the same state. Only what, an hour and a half apart? I mean, that's so close to each other. I think the only other ones that are in the same state is, Texas with Houston and what is that, Dallas, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth. I think those are the only ones that share a state together, right? And and DC, I think.
Cali has San Diego and LA.
Florida will have Tampa in the Super League, right?
But who's Cali? Who's California in Super League?
Oh, I thought you were talking NWSL.
No, I'm talking about Super League.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so DC, I think, because Washington Spirit, is that their name?
Yeah.
In NWSL and DC are going to be direct competition with each other, sharing D1 status in the same city. Louisville and Racing and now Sporting are going to be butting heads that close together. I've just started really thinking about how much true like women's soccer wars we're about to see.
Yeah, it might be kind of dumb, but
a little dumb.
We'll see. I mean, they all are.
I love the Super League. I love what it's doing, but women's soccer is in a state where I don't want the competition necessarily, unless it's a rising tides lift all ships, which is never guaranteed in this sport in this country.
I wish they would have stayed at the second division, but everything's fine. Everything's fine. Anyway, let's go ahead back out to California and let's continue a pre-game or a pre-show conversation. And one of the 136 valleys has joined.
So I'm going to update the count. Some of these are actually gulches and canyons. I think we've got 102 valleys in California.
102 valleys.
Antelope Valley has joined the Valley contingency of League One. Central Valley, now Antelope Valley. And, they have their team. And the rumor kind of got floated on like a Tuesday or something like that. And then it was official on a Thursday. And it's like, that is the fastest and maybe quietest league announcement that I've heard. Like, it's usually there's rumblings for a while, but it literally just showed up one day and the next day it was like, it's here. And we're like, hold on. We thought this was just one of those weird posts that people were like, we should bring USL here. Not we are bringing USL here. This is bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, Antelope Valley, for people like me as of a week ago who hadn't heard of it, is kind of the northern part of Los Angeles County. It seems like the team is going to be based out of Lancaster, California, which has about 400,000 people. I was really surprised at I tweeted something dumb about Antelope Valley, what a cool name for a place. And I got like a ton of response from people in and around that area who were excited and engaging with soccer content. So I'm kind of excited to see what gives with Antelope Valley. And that's a market that could support 20 professional teams if they wanted to, just given the expanse and the population. So seems like a really good addition for League One, who needs to get that West Coast footprint going.
Yeah, I think the combination of like the ownership group seems mildly serious in terms of they have the stadium already identified, which they're going the Rowdies route of minor league baseball stadium that's vacated. They're going to play it. They're going to convert it into soccer specific venue, which I think, Al Lang, obviously one of like the iconic venues in USL. And so someone having a plan like that, I think it's a no brainer for getting started in League One. I like you had no like frame of reference for Antelope Valley, but like you said, the metro area of LA could, when you think about cities globally, that have, these sort of soccer ecosystems like London or Buenos Aires, or like any of these large metropolitan areas that have this appetite, the amount of clubs that exist in those areas is like astronomical, like in the hundreds sometimes. So the fact that LA, obviously one of the biggest metro areas, plus, you know, a huge appetite for soccer. I think there will be the memes, like we joked about all of the valleys in California joining USL League One. But at the same time, I think this feels pretty serious. And I think the hope here is that, you know, we're getting something closer to a Union Omaha or a Fort Madison in terms of an addition to the league versus a Central Valley. Like they won't want to repeat the sins of their forebears.
Yeah, I mean, just given the arc of where League One is going with what they're adding in Washington, the fact that Central Valley is hanging on, persistent rumors about Ballard, like they're really getting a footprint in that part of the country, which is going to be so key, expanding upon the southeastern base that is so solid and only getting more so with what we just talked about in Lexington. Nothing but good signs here, I say.
Yeah, I will say that in the initial announcement, I always laugh at the mention of any big infrastructure projects being completed because we're in America. So when they said like it's the future home of the Mojave Inland Port and high-speed rail lines connecting LA and Vegas, I was like, I'll believe those when I see them.
Over my dead body if we finish a high-speed rail, right?
High-speed rail in America? Like, we'll see.
Didn't I see something about Vegas already has like an underground tunnel just for Teslas? I mean, maybe that's what they're talking about. They have a Tesla line from Antelope Valley to Las Vegas.
The Elon Musk tax write-off tunnel.
Which is funny enough that they're naming the stadium.
This was a government contract tunnel. Yeah, anyways.
This is X.com's stadium.
I was going to say this is not going to become like me ripping on Elon Musk for an hour podcast, but
I mean, this is live on Twitter because we're still calling it that. You know, this is live there. So hi, Elon. Real fast, guys, I said I didn't necessarily know if we want to talk about it, but I just want to hit it. OKC Next Pro.
So the rumor here being that there's like an OKC MLS nextpro.com or something to that effect, but which obviously anybody could go buy that website, but it happened with the team that ended up being Carolina Core, is that the name of it? It ended up in the team in Alabama that's the Nashville affiliate. So there's a precedent for MLS Next Pro kind of tipping their hand by buying websites. Really unfortunate if OKC does end up getting filled by an Next Pro side. Say what you will about the quality of what will likely be an independent ownership group, but having those fans having to support their team against Los Dos and every other like 28 other teams that don't have supporters, that just sucks in general. It sucks that the Energy haven't been able to get back off the ground. That was a team that had passionate support and seemed like they could really do something in that market once upon a time. So nothing set in stone at the moment, but the tea leaves aren't looking good.
By the way, speaking of the Energy, have you guys seen their website lately?
No.
They still update it with USL News. They're updating it like they have week 31 of Save of the Week on there.
They must just run like the aggregator or like an RSS feed or something like that. I don't know.
They have to, and I understand that, but also kind of hilarious. Also, if you want to go to shop.energyfc.com, hey, you can buy everything. Nothing's on. There's not much on clearance though. You would think they would work on that, but you can buy everything. They are still charging for full price.
Bob Funk is just going to the office every day, updating the website and trying to sell his T-shirts on the Steam store.
Can we start getting Taft turf? Like people buy turf of other things. Can you just start selling the turf?
What a full circle moment if we could get get the Rio OKC pitch onto Taft to get energy playing again.
Why don't they just do the thing that they did with Oakland that one time, or like the 2 times where they just bring in turf and just lay it on top of
That's
a
what I'm
track?
saying. The Rio, that's the Rio
Homecoming,
OKC,
right?
That's the Rio OKC. If we come full circle where Rio OKC saves energy, that would be how I write the end of the script.
Do y'all remember earlier this year when Tulsa did a training session in OKC? Did anyone ever actually hear what happened with that? Like, did they do that?
I kind of can't tell if FC Tulsa's admin is just like taking the piss half the time, and I love it, but
They're like, hey, come, because I remember they made this big post about like, come down to OKC, show them what real, or like, let's show them football or show them soccer for the first time, or what real soccer looks like. And it's like, what are we doing?
stop, they're already dead.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, look, let's go ahead and move on to some matches, and quickly just kind of talk on Pittsburgh winning the Players' Shield, where Dikwa, they play it out wide, and Dikwa to the back post scores, what was it, 36 seconds in, which, I mean, if that didn't tell you the mindset that Pittsburgh was coming in with, I mean, we all expect Bob Lilly just to kind of sit behind the 8 ball, and, you know, especially away from home, just who cares if a boring 1-0 and, you know, get that one in like the 60th minute. Seems like the most predictable Bob Lilly thing ever. And he says, why don't we just bomb it up the wings, float it to the back post and figure it out? You know, I mean, it definitely felt like Pittsburgh said, we are taking this Shield and we do not care about your feelings.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it echoed that first matchup between these two teams where it was Dikwa pretty early on in the match, and then Pittsburgh just did the Pittsburgh thing and defended for a good 70 minutes. I think what was impressive on the night was Tampa Bay pretty clearly came in with a different approach. They went with a back 5 to try to give themselves that extra pair of hands to stave off the press, and then they turn over immediately. They don't mark the golden boot favorite at the far post, and that's that for the game, essentially. And that's not giving enough respect to how Lilly has drilled this team in that 5-3-2 shape that they've run to perfection for 31 weeks now. It's really impressive. I mean, Pittsburgh's a team that's flirted with finishing in the top in the league a couple of times. They've won the East once in 2019. To finally get over the hump and position themselves in the way that they have to make a real playoff run, you have to feel good about it. It feels like this is the year that they really kind of break that quote unquote Lilly curse and make a legitimate push towards the title. Like, there's something about the scoring you're getting from Dikwa that you just haven't had in previous seasons. Pair that with a very, very deep roster, and I just see something going right here for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, this is a great result for them. I do think a lot of credit has to be given to Tampa Bay too, because I think they actually did create quite a bit, and obviously they were a little bit wasteful in the chances that they did create, and they couldn't turn it into anything in terms of a result. It shows how good this Tampa Bay team is still offensively, and the fact that they are no slouch, like, just behind this Pittsburgh team. But there's just something about this Pittsburgh team where the bend but don't break is more of just like it. There's something very certain about it. Like, as it plays out, you're just, even in the most dangerous moments for Tampa Bay, you're never really that concerned about Pittsburgh conceding. And it's just such a strange feeling around this team, because I mean, we talked at the top of the show about, Forward Madison and being like, oh, we were super high on them and they've obviously faded. Pittsburgh at the beginning of the season, in the light of now winning the Players' Shield, we were thinking, this just doesn't look like the same Pittsburgh. They're really not in there, like, they're really not finding their rhythm, all that stuff. Obviously, they figured it out quite early on in the season, and they storm the league to the best record in the entire league, losing. I think, crucially, talking about their pursuit of USL Cup, losing one match at home the entire season as of right. So they are looking extremely dangerous. They obviously finished the season away to Detroit City, so that one loss at home, the only blemish at Highmark, and I think that is going to be a just horrifying place to go for teams coming out of the bottom of the East in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs, trying to get results there. It's going to be rough to try to get through.
Real quick on Highmark, the Riverhounds averaged more than 5,000 fans a game there. Their average attendance is higher than the stadium's capacity because they just oversold a couple games. Like, the fan support they've got in that city for this team is completely awesome to see.
If there's anything Pittsburgh fans are known for, it's just supporting their team. The fact that anybody goes and watch the Pirates regularly should tell you that they're definitely going to be willing to watch the Riverhounds be good. Like, they're known for supporting their team. Pittsburgh is so in on Pittsburgh, and I know a lot of cities are like, we support our city, but it's hard for me to think about a city supporting their own like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is we are us and no one else. We could care less about anything else. Like, Pittsburgh is so in on that, and excited for them. And nobody wants to go in there during the playoffs, like, at all. No one wants that. And I mean, the idea that Legion, if assuming they win a playoff game, might have to go to Highmark makes me sick.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say to talk about Bob Lilly too in this. Obviously we focus on the defense, and I mean, goals against 29. The entire season, they've been allowing less than a goal a game, and at the other end, there's something very old school about the fact that Dikwa, 20 goals, 0 assists. He is
awesome.
A number 9. Like, he does not link play. He does not involve anyone else. He is simply on the end of stuff, and it is wild, especially given the fact that you've got, it's not just, they scored 20 goals because they've got this guy. They've got Canardo Forbes, Rivera, Ibarra, who all have provided 4 or 5 assists. Canardo Forbes, obviously the main guy with double digits, but yeah, it's like everybody is feeding this goal machine they have up front. And I just love the old school nature of a guy who's got 20 goals and no assists.
And to circle back real quick on one more with the assist thing. Junior Etta was the guy who got the cross into Dikwa for that first goal. He was somebody who was on the Rowdies a couple years ago, and he was a defensive midfielder who never showed that creative spark whatsoever. Lilly has just spotted something in his game, converted him into a wingback, and he's got 3 assists this year, all from crosses in that situation. Speaks to exactly what this team's philosophy is.
You kind of mentioned the whole, I guess, that many goals and no assist. I think for the first time in a long time, it feels like Pittsburgh has their first true Nico Brett replacement, because even in the past, last year you had Cicerone, who was equal provider as he is, scorer. And they had a lot of guys who would go up top. I mean, Valesky was kind of doing that for them too. He was kind of provider, kind of scorer, but kind of stuck behind someone. Nico was their last guy who was just, I goal. All I do is goal. You want me to pass? That sucks because I'm passing the ball into the net. And it feels like Dikwa is the first real return to that. And that 2018 team from Pittsburgh, it's the last Pittsburgh team that was just whoa, this is Bob Lilly ball. And it feels like they got that true number 9 right. And I feel like that's been the big difference.
And Dikwa, I mean, just having talked with a couple of St. Louis people who are familiar with his game from way back when, it really wasn't expected that he had this in him. He was good for kind of being the striker you bring off the bench. He'll maybe get you 3 to 5 goals in a season. And once more, Lily spotted something where he thought this guy is going to put in the work and fit exactly what I need out of a number 9. Can't say it hasn't paid off.
It's the last point on Pittsburgh's the tough job that people face going through Pittsburgh on the way to USL Cup. Only 2 of Pittsburgh's 5 losses this season came in the East. 3 of their losses were in Colorado Springs, El Paso, and Orange County. So having to go to Highmark for all of these, like, yeah, it's going to be. They are favorites, like, simply because they just haven't lost games when they play in the Eastern time zone.
Are they now? Forgive my awful geography because I don't. Are they? No, surely Hartford is the most Eastern team, but Pittsburgh has to be up there as being the most Eastern team, right?
I mean, Pittsburgh's pretty far west in Pennsylvania, so
yeah, a lot of those, any team like Loudon,
the Carolinas and all those,
exactly.
Further east, yeah.
Charleston.
But they're like, I mean, you also have to deal with the being up and east thing, right? Because even if you look at your, lower areas like that, to go across the country, like to LA, you're not having to deal with going up and over, right? I mean, when you think about them traveling, think about the other way too. Imagine you make it all the way to the finals, say you're Orange County, you're Sacramento, you're San Antonio, and you're having to take that extra 30 minutes, extra hour on the flight because they are northeast. That's brutal. I mean, I know it's just 30 minutes or an hour, but that extra airtime is just extra time that you have to take to recover or suffer through.
Yeah.
I did enjoy, though, the Kaler trying to do Yankee geography there with Pittsburgh.
If it's north of the Mason-Dixon line, it's Yankee. It's all Yankee to me. Past the Mississippi River, it sounds like the Wild West. I don't know. I got one small frame of reference, and that's all I got. Look, let's talk about that West, where Orange County take down San Antonio, and we've seen our friends in San Antonio land be like, "Well, it's really hard to repeat," and I get that, but also you have a man advantage for what, 40 minutes?
40 minutes, yeah.
This San Antonio team last year, which is mostly the same team, demolishes Orange County. I understand Orange County is a lot better, and we should be praising Orange County, but it also feels like what's going on with San Antonio, because this team would have bagged 4 against a team that's down a man for 40 minutes.
Alan Marcina just keeps putting his foot in it week in and week out, and it's got to be frustrating if you're a San Antonio fan. I know I was somewhat harsh about the whole we're going to bring in an emergency goalie and just not play Jordan Farr for the final 5 weeks. That's hurting the defensive organization. There's no 2 ways around it. Last time these teams played 10 days prior to this weekend, San Antonio was very organized in an off-ball 4-4-2 that just didn't give space to OC in the midfield. And they changed it up and played a 4-3-3 that was all bent out of shape for most of the match. Some of the decisions, some of the tactics that Marcina is going for are so illogical and don't match that hard-nosed, consistent approach that he brought this team a title with. It's very odd. And to OC's credit, they had Colin Shuttler back in goal. Their starting midfield was back together. They were clicking on all cylinders when it came to what they were doing with the ball. But I just come away thinking, yes, OC is a contender. I think we had already thought about that, but San Antonio has question marks right now.
On the red card,
yeah,
was that I just don't think it's a red. I think obviously it's the classic case of when there's no VAR, the ref always punishes the reaction more than the instigating act, right? Because I think, is it Maloney?
Tainter
Tainter
healed up and kicked McNulty in the nuts, and
Yeah.
then McNulty shoved him back. Yeah.
Which like is kind of, to me, this is one of those where like the ref probably is fine with like, you break it up, you book both, and you just move on with your life, right? Like there's no reason to give red here. And there's like there was just like a weird overreaction to the fact that, and even on the broadcast, it was like, he's hit McNulty's like hit him in the throat. And it's like, that's not at all what happened. Like he grabbed his shirt and Tanner like really just hammed it up, which like, fair play. There's no VAR. Ref buys it. Guy gets sent off. I think, yeah. The weird thing is in watching this game is like there is a minor miracle that occurs in the 7th minute of stoppage time that keeps San Antonio from scoring. Mm-hmm. Like there's basically no reason that ball shouldn't find the back of the net, and it just somehow doesn't. Like Andrew Fox doesn't make meaningful contact with it under the bar. It kind of just floats down. Physics were defied. Like things were just occurring that someone wanted OC to win that game. They are Milanowski, like as he goes, so goes OC. And I think obviously anytime you have a guy like that in the side, you're capable of winning games. I don't know that against many other playoff teams, Orange County sees this game out. I think there is something specific about the dysfunction of San Antonio that kind of lets them off the hook, and a minor like supernatural act in the 7th minute of stoppage time.
At what point can you hang your hat on the mentality monsters thing, right? Because the moment you start having the kick up into someone's genital area, that's not a mentality monster. That's mentally weak. I love Mitchell Tainer. I love watching him play, but frankly, I don't know if that's something that happens last year when you are constantly, frankly, confused on what tactics are. You're moving away from what worked so well, and you're dealing with dysfunction in the back because Jordan Farr isn't back there. If we're being honest, like when all that starts happening, when do you lose faith in what's being preached to you? Right? Because you're like, we are the same team that was arguably the best team in USL history, barring Baby Bulls. But even so, I do think that San Antonio team could have given them a run for their money. Forget the names that are actually in that side. Like, at what point do you say we're the same team? The league hasn't gotten that much better. There's only one person changing crap. I don't know.
I thought the team selection was a bit odd in San Antonio's case, where granted some of it comes down to the fact that they're run into the ground and just always pretty injured, but Trova Bonia was in the back line. That's a player who he had made one start as a San Antonio player. In that game, he got subbed off after 13 minutes for just like making a dumb mistake, and he hadn't started a game since. And now he's starting at Orange County when you're really trying to lock up like your position in the table. Trust the roster. Like, I'm here for it, but that seems like maybe the wrong game to be throwing him back into the fire. I don't know. Like, I guess I just have to trust Alan Marcina knows better than what I know. But there have been enough systematic issues over the course of the season, enough indecision on Marcina's part with the tactics that I just have pause.
And I think you have to, when there's been, because we say it's the same team that won last year, but like crucially it's not in many ways. Like there's certain areas where it has turned over like so aggressively, and it not just from last season, but from like within this season. Like I think there's just obviously the injuries play a huge part in that. But I think just the inconsistency, like San Antonio last year, you could count on probably nine of the 11 names on the start on that sheet, like on that starting 11, were going to be the same kind of week in and week out. And that's just not how he's managed it this year. And whether that's enforced or whatever, I just think like that's been a big reason why they haven't shown that consistency from last year. And I think it's led to Marcina then making some of these like almost second guessing himself in certain situations where last year it was, hey, this is how we play. We're going to play the same way every single game. Like we're not really going to change to meet a matchup, and it worked. And I think when that faltered this year, he just obviously made a couple of like really ruthless decisions, especially the Jordan Farr one just feels like maybe particularly like over the top. And I don't know if it's trying to double down on the mentality thing, but yeah, he's they're just struggling for consistency. And I mean, shoot, I know that better than most this year with my team. So anyways,
Just one last thing on this match. Wana Sokar still playing for them blows my mind. Like, oh yeah, he's still around, still on loan, not a permanent player. He'll forever be on loan in the USL. And also, I mean, Thomas Among coming in for Brian Olowski is kind of gross. Like
That's
that's
been great down the stretch. Yeah.
like that's disgusting. If I'm a team, any team, it's like, oh, you're taking off Among, who you bringing in? Olowski, great. Oh, you're taking off Olowski, who you bringing in? Among. All right, like that's disgusting.
Real quick, poor Juan Azokar, who was spectacular for Oakland, like 10 goals as a wingback, and then between some personal issues, some injuries, just has never got a foothold in this team.
No. Yeah, where do you think where do you think he goes on loan next? Do you think he's a West guy again, or like where do we think he's going?
New Mexico.
Oh. Would him and Zico Bailey, are they the same side?
Bailey's been playing center mid the past couple weeks. Bailey plays anywhere. He's
That's
been
true.
great for New Mexico too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's go ahead and get into some predicting of matches. And we mentioned Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh good, and they need to get revenge against the one team that beat them at home, like Phil mentioned. But this Pittsburgh team is going against Detroit City, going up to Keyworth, and 52 minutes into the show. Let's go ahead and do that tactics show all about that wonderful 4-3-3 that TMFJ has brought out.
Detroit City got a big win over Loudoun this weekend by playing in a 4-1-4-1 or 4-3-3 shape that used Dominic Gasso as the holding midfielder and allowed Lai Diop and especially Maxi Rodriguez at that left center mid spot to get upfield and punish Loudoun's 4-5-1 midfield. You're going to see a couple chances here, a couple looks where Rodriguez, as you see, is in the box and Lai Diop is matching him on that right side. Diop ends up getting a shot here. It goes pretty far astray, but it encapsulates why Detroit was so effective in this game. They were really able to control the center of the park and create overloads. This is going to be the goal that puts Detroit ahead and wins the game. And it's driven by Rodriguez getting that give and go with Ben Morris, getting in behind and scoring a goal. Rodriguez had 9 goals last year, and so you're maximizing its effect. But at the same time, Detroit needed to be able to defend effectively in the midfield and protect Gasso in that lone holding spot. Here, they do a poor job. Loudoun is able to work past him, get into the final third, and nearly score a goal to tie the game up. However, Detroit had answers. You see the shape of their press here as the clip slows down a bit, and Loudoun looks to play between the lines. But Stephen Carroll, a center back, steps up next to Gasso, leaves the defensive line, and solidifies things. And of course, Gasso was good as well. You see him putting in the tackle there, but he's supported by Lai Diop at the same time. Detroit just had a real balance to their game in this one. Again, you're going to see a look with Stephen Carroll stepping up, doing the job between the lines and making sure that Detroit had a better sense of spacing as they defended in their own block. Of course, you can't play error-free soccer, and Loudoun is a team with some dynamic players, so naturally turn to Nate Steinwasser when the going gets tough. Steinwasser is going to make a great save here, punctuating what was really a complete performance and a really great strategy from Trevor James. Now, next week is going to be a question. Pittsburgh doesn't really have anything to play for, but they're Pittsburgh. And Detroit needs a win, and they may well use this shape to get there.
The one thing about this match before we get too far in, I not saying it would have changed the match at all. I don't think it would have. I think Detroit City had a lot of control in this. How that Steinwasser challenge did not get a penalty blows my mind. That's the clearest penalty I've seen in a long time.
Loud and sneaky, can't do anything with it but sneaky.
Yeah. Listen, I think that sometimes Detroit City this year sort of lost the plot, and sometimes you just kind of have to let Maxey do his magic. And this match was, a lot of Maxey magic. And, there was still a lot going on. Gasso, I liked the way he looked. Was it perfect all the time? No, but it freed Maxey to drop back. It freed him to go forward. It allowed him to just kind of roam and do his thing. And I think it's made this Detroit City, attack actually look like an attack. And with as good as their backline is, maybe they were kind of wasting their time with the 3-man backline all year because, frankly, their center backs are incredible anyway. And if you have Devin Alman-Mensah on the left, he can act like just a third center back anyway in defense if you want him to, or get into the attack. He can do that too. I think they were kind of wasting an attacker a lot of this time, and it feels like if they would have done something like this sooner, who knows where we would be talking about Detroit City.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for them, just given the state of the table and the tiebreakers, is they need to beat Pittsburgh. And in a normal scenario, if you're facing a team that's already clinched the Players' Shield, that's a win. But it's Pittsburgh, it's Bob Lilly. You know that they're not going to let up whatsoever. I also think, I know I just praised the shape change for Trevor James there, but I don't necessarily see it making a huge difference against a Riverhounds team that keeps 3 central midfielders pretty deep in block no matter what. We'll see what gives. I just have a tough time. I think Pittsburgh ends up winning this one.
Yeah, I have Pittsburgh as well. It's been feast or famine for Detroit, and among their 2 recent wins, 3-0 over Hartford and then Loudoun, they've been beaten 5-0 by Phoenix, 3-0 by Colorado Springs, 3-0 by Indy 11. I think Pittsburgh makes easy work, unfortunately, of Detroit City, because if it's all or nothing, a 3-0 win or a heavy defeat, the latter is far more likely than the former. There's maybe I'm cursing them, but there's no way that this Detroit City team puts 3 goals on Pittsburgh. So yeah, it's a Pittsburgh win.
I put Detroit with a question mark because, this is going to be Trevor James' last match as the manager of Detroit City. I think that's going to have a little extra juice to it. Detroit versus Pittsburgh in of itself is already a rivalry. I think there's going to be extra juice there. And it's a big match for playoffs. And I have a feeling, I know what you said there, John, and I do think that there's also a real tempt there now that the 1 seed does not get a bye anymore. The 1 seed has to play the 8 of giving your starters rest. Maybe Dequa starts to try to submit the golden boot or something like that, but I wouldn't be shocked if after halftime or 50 minutes in, those guys get taken off and you're getting guys who haven't played all year playing. And maybe there's that little bit of hope. I'm kind of playing the atmosphere, kind of playing the vibe, and also Bob Lilly trying to get that last little bit of rest. Because if this was years past, the first round would get a bye and he wouldn't have to worry about resting his starters. But now you do not want to be Bob Lilly and lose Dequa for the entire playoffs because you decide to stick it to Detroit one last time. You don't want to risk that either.
Yeah.
So I put Detroit with a question mark because I really don't believe in it. But, here we are. Next up, let's go ahead and go out west, and I want to talk a little New Mexico versus Memphis. New Mexico, who has found new life, and I still refuse to believe in them until they give me a reason, but they're starting to give me a reason, and it's starting to look nice versus a Memphis team who really took it to El Paso, but they're also a team that has been inconsistent at best lately.
Yeah, I mean, mixed stakes here where Memphis plays this game on Friday. If they get any sort of result, they clinch the 4 seed, and they're going to get a home playoff game. If they lose and Louisville wins, then Louisville gets one at Lynn Family Stadium. So there are some stakes here for Memphis, but New Mexico has to come out with a little bit more passion. Like, they're on this hot run. They've won 3 games out of 5 against some really tough opponents. What they're doing in the press right now is fantastic. They forced probably the worst back pass you're going to see all year out of Phoenix to win the game over the weekend. I just like what they're doing in a whole lot of ways right now. Ultimately, New Mexico is in a spot where they kind of need the result too, just given the fact that they barely hold any of the tiebreakers on that Western bubble. I have this one ending up as a draw, but I really could see it going either way.
Yeah, I've got Memphis winning, and it's way more out of just how dare you if they beat El Paso as badly as they did this weekend and then contrive to somehow not win against New Mexico, it'll be a personal affront to me. So yeah, I've gone with Memphis strictly for that reason.
I went with Memphis because it sticks with my same philosophy of I refuse to believe in New Mexico until they make me believe in them. And while I do like what they're doing, I just there's something about the way that New Mexico just kind of plays that I just don't fully believe in it. And I do like what they do with the press. That said, you have Aaron Malloy, who seems to be like the ultimate press breaker. He seems like the player that can unlock that, play it through the channels, and you're having to deal with one-on-ones with like Rodrigo da Costa, and that's not what you want to do if you're New Mexico.
That's an excellent point. Yeah,
I'm taking Memphis, but I could also definitely see New Mexico getting their statement win and getting themselves into the playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked by either result. Next up, if I can find it somewhere, where to go? I don't even know where
oh yeah, Bill territory here.
Yeah, let's go ahead, go out to Oakland, who are reeling from in a loss to San Diego, which is that really even a loss? I mean, they had magic going on in the air versus El Paso, which that was a loss.
Phil, let you take the stage here.
All right. Well, I've got a lot of thoughts. First, I guess we didn't give enough air to, and obviously meant to like shout out San Diego Loyal's last home game in the regular season. It was, like you said, magic in the air, and I don't think Oakland awoke something very primitive, like some sort of magic when they scored that opening goal, because it just seemed to unleash just this wave of Loyal attacks. And there was, I was like, is there a point at which this ends? In terms of, it felt like Loyal could just go down and score every single time that they attacked after a certain point. Damas obviously given the fans something pretty amazing there. So, and I know some of the traveling Oakland supporters too wrote some like really supportive messages to the Loyal fans as well. And yeah, it was one of those nights. But it does, in terms of the script writers, USL script writers have absolutely popped off with this one, because Oakland, as a result, are now facing this like must-win game against El Paso at home. Both teams in this like do or die situation, and I have locked Oakland, and I will tell you why. Because
here we go.
Because El Paso, if you were drawing up at the beginning of the season and said, hey, whatever else happens all season, the the last game of the year, you're going to have to win or draw to get into the playoffs. Which team do you want to play? I don't know that there's a team, like, historically speaking for El Paso, that they would pick less than Oakland. Like, they have never beat Oakland Roots, despite the fact that 3 of the 4 times that they've played have been at home. And so now they're on the road in California. The only previous matchup that they had was last season in Oakland, because the other 2 seasons that they played were the COVID shortened seasons, all this stuff. Last year in Oakland, 4-0 to the Roots. It was an absolute demolishing in one of El Paso's like worst runs of the season. El Paso coming off of a tough loss on the road, and by tough I mean absolutely demoralizing in many ways. I don't necessarily see Locomotive bouncing back and getting like this big result to get into the playoffs in a place where in a state where they've struggled to historically to get results, just California in general, against a team that they've never beaten, and a Roots team that matches up quite well against Locomotive. I just don't see it happening, especially given the mental. I mean, by 50 minutes in Memphis, mentally the team was done. There was no like comeback on the cards. There was no like fight left. And the couple of players that did show fight for Locomotive were Chris Garcia, who's been, unfortunately for him, a bit player largely this season, but he was the only one who showed like real fight, and Nick Hines, who has also found himself like more or less on the fringes of the team. Those were the 2 that showed the spirit. And Peter Knudsen, who recently joined the team, is on international duty with the Faroe Islands, so he won't be available. So yeah, it's a comedy of errors in El Paso, and I will be absolutely floored if this is not an Oakland victory.
50 minutes in Memphis seems like it'd be a really good or bad book, and I'm not sure which one it is.
Sick blues album.
You mentioned that basically Oakland almost being a bogey team. And to be fair, San Diego could have said that too just this last week. I mean, don't you know, like after that first goal, there was how many people in San Diego were just like, oh God, not this again. Oakland always seems to be the last seed coming into the playoffs, but also the team that beats everybody, and it doesn't make sense. That's just kind of Oakland. And I do think that if you're El Paso right now, of any team that you could be battling against for the playoff spot, Oakland probably is the one you want to be playing, because Paul Blanchette is still facing a lot of shots, but he's not stopping them like he was at the beginning of the year, because, I mean, it's impossible to keep up the pace that he was doing, because that was gross. But it's hard, and I think if there's any team that you would want to go against, I think weirdly enough, as an outsider, forget the vibes of how the fan or the players or the coaches may feel, this probably is one of the ones that you would rather play. Maybe Monterey Bay, not looking amazing right now, but also I wouldn't want to take on a guy like Hugh Roberts or Alex Dixon in a do or die game. I wouldn't want to do that.
The last point I will make is on the Blanchette facing a lot of shots. Locomotive have failed to produce a shot on target in now 186 straight minutes. That is not goals. That's just a shot on target. They've gone 2 games, and it was the Eric Calvillo's winner against Charleston Battery was the last time that they had a shot on target. So, yeah.
Of all times that Ryan isn't here, this is such
I
a
was going to
way out.
say, if they reach the 20th minute without a goal, they'll match the extended edition of the Fellowship. There you go.
and actually, Kaylor, I thought of you during the dismantling in Memphis, because Robert Sanchez got a clean sheet without having to make a save against Locomotive, which is just like disgusting. And it was personally upsetting, because I'm like, I know statistically, because of what we talk about on this podcast, like I know that he's statistically one of the worst keepers in the league, and we literally can't force him to do anything.
It's the come on, do something meme, but it's
Yeah.
El Paso's attack.
I've got that somewhere in my camera roll. But
Yeah, and just quick here, Oakland on the sly losing Brian Tamakas and Hackshaw to international duty this week is a gigantic deal. Like that's the best part of their defense, just out the window. And this is the defense that looked atrocious against San Diego. They've also lost 6 out of 8 games. They're winless in 8.
Yeah. Oh,
this
rip.
year.
John, I think we lost. Oh no, tough. This is brutal. We lost you. Now you're back. Yeah. Who'd you take? You kind of broke up. Uh-oh, it's over. I'm taking Oakland. Honestly, this is another one of those situations that I always come back to of who's at home. Basically, who is it? And Oakland's at home. That's kind of what it comes down to for me, because I think if this was at El Paso, I would take El Paso because I do think that this is a winnable game, especially with like Hackshaw and all them out. This is a winnable game for El Paso, but it's not at home. And honestly, Oakland at night, and this is not a gang joke, but Oakland at night is one of the scariest places you can play in this league. They are so good, and when Oakland's rolling at home, they are just a terrifying place to go, which honestly is the whole reason I'm taking Oakland, because that home field advantage they have is so good. Let's go ahead, and let's talk about those that Sacramento and the Miami FC, because 4 straight wins for Miami. They're starting to really turn it around. They get a really big win against Charleston team, and then you have Sacramento, who is just kind of just doing their thing. Eventually, after they got off their blistering spot of just never losing, they have a really exciting match against RGV, which it looks like RGV is doing their like annual backdoor into the playoffs that they always do, because they're just there, just waiting, and somehow they'll make it in. Don't know how they're going to, probably. I don't know. But they get a very exciting win, but you have to feel like the team that's going to come out with the more energy is the one that's won 4 games off the bounce and have, basically went from being one of the worst teams in the East to being playoff contenders and someone you wouldn't want to play. So, Phil, where are you going off with this one?
Yeah, I'm going with Sacramento. I think Miami's magic just runs out a little bit. Having to go across country, they haven't been like, I guess, they've done this stint out on the East like for a while. They haven't traveled, and so I just don't see them going into Sacramento and getting a win. I think Sac Republic comes away with it.
Yeah, and as long as I'm staying on the connection here, hopefully turning off the camera and see if that helps. I have Sacramento locked here. I think I'm freezing once again, possibly.
No, you're good. Oh, nope. Man, he was not good. I'm a liar. He took Sacramento with a lock. Poor John. I took, and now just to double check, I took Sacramento. I'm like 9% sure. If I didn't, I meant to. Oh, I also took Sacramento with a lock. Honestly, this still just comes down to the indomitable at home. And I think there's a interesting note here of attendance wise, and I don't want to get full attendance FC, but right now, Lou City and Sacramento are battling it out for the highest attendance, like home attendance on the year. And which I think is interesting, considering the fact that Sacramento had like a 20,000 person match. Meanwhile, Lou City just consistently just has people coming. I think that's an interesting note, but it's the last game before the playoffs. It's going to be a packed house. It's going to be fun. I think Miami is going to make it fun. I really do. I think this is going to be a game because, I mean, you saw against RGV, this is not the same Sacramento side that was just doesn't allow a goal. I think
Right.
Miami is going to take some shots. I think they're going to have a good time, but the Indomitable in my mind are just Indomitable at home. You can't beat them. It's so hard to beat that team. And against when you're Miami, who kind of has to win, not really, I guess, because you can still rely on Detroit losing. And I think is Tulsa officially done, or can they still backdoor their way in? The math is confusing to me.
Yeah, Tulsa. No, Tulsa is officially out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. So, yeah, basically, you're looking at relying on Detroit City to not get a draw, which, I mean, if we're being honest, Detroit City drawing at home does feel like it could very well happen. Meanwhile, Miami having to draw away feels a lot less likely to Sacramento, which I know we just praised Lily Ball, but also that drawing at home is one of the things that Detroit City does really well against all teams of every caliber. They don't get blown out at home. They just don't. And if you're Miami, you're kind of going to Sacramento thinking we have to get a draw or a win. And that's a hard place to be mentally, which is why I'm taking Sacramento with a lock.
Yeah.
So, and we have a couple of League One that we can hit real fast. Like, again, if I can find it, let's go ahead and go to Madison versus Omaha. Another Battle of the Birds, because we have a lot of Battle of the Birds in League One. And John, are you alive?
Yeah, I'm
No.
coming in on 5G on the phone? Question mark.
You're here. Yeah, man. You're
Okay,
here.
good.
Battle of the Birds, where again, we're talking about this Omaha who are they're still hunting down for a player shield. They are going for it after being a team that half of the people in the League One halfway predictions thing, there were people that said, me included, that Omaha very well could miss the playoffs for the first time in their league history. And here they are, could be winning the Players' Shield after a crazy run versus a Madison team who is fighting for their playoff life, which just feels so opposite from what we said again just a couple months ago, where we were like, where's Mims? Where's Mims? Where did he go when Omaha needed him the most? He disappeared, and now Omaha doesn't care. They just win games. They're having a good time, although I would like to know where he is. Meanwhile, Madison, like, you were built off this strong defense. I boldly said it was the best back line in League One, and it has seemed to crumble to bits and they're facing a team who seems to be scoring goals for fun now.
Yeah, I went Madison coming in with so much heart in this one. They need the result more than anything else. Omaha, of course, like motivated. They want to have that top seed, keep up the momentum that they really built in the latter half of the season. To me, the fact that this is in Wisconsin, the fact that Madison just needs more from this game, I think they come away with a draw that's probably going to see them into the postseason. I think this will be a tightly run affair, probably a pretty defensive game. Wouldn't be shocked if Omaha got it because they're just the better side, but I don't know, a little bit of Madison magic.
I have Omaha in this one. I think like what Dom Casciato's done in Omaha is kind of flying under the radar. No, not to use more bird puns. But in the more like national consciousness, I feel like it's not a conversation that we're necessarily having yet about how good this Omaha team is. I mean, doing the math, it's what 14 unbeaten and 13 of the 14 are wins. they're just really good. And I mean, when you talk about, especially with the variance in League One, just in terms of traveling, different venues, different, like going on a run like that is really impressive, regardless of how good you are. DeSantos and Meza are unreal for this level, and obviously Lewis Hill like has added a different dimension for them. So yeah, I think this is one of those stories in USL that, especially if they go on and do something special in the playoffs, I think it'll be more of a thing than it currently is. But this Omaha team, I think they get it done just off the basis of like you said, I think the better side, and they are truly, I mean, flying right now. So yeah.
It's so hard not to talk about League One teams and then not actually use bird terminology. Like, it's such a part of sports vernacular, and then every League One team's a bird. Even the ones that are not a bird, kind of a bird. So it's a hard place to be in. Something I've been following for a while with this team, when I say this team, Ford Madison, and I think I said it from the very first game that I watched them. I have not been sold with Shipman. I think that his number for Golden Glove is being heavily inflated by an incredible backline, and he's been borderline bad all year. And this year, when his defense has not been as solid, it's really exposed that. And when you're facing a team like Omaha right now, you can't have a shaky back. You can't have a shaky keeper. You just can't. Like a guy like we mentioned with Oakland, Paul Blanchette has also been has been a shooting target all year long, but dude's just a shot stopper. Haven't felt that way about Shipman, and with the way oh my gosh, Omaha's playing, it just does not feel like it's going to end well for Ford Madison. I'm taking Omaha, which kind of breaks my heart because I've been really rooting for this Ford Madison team. Really rooting for them. That said, also, though, it's in Wisconsin, and if you watch the Lexington match, that crowd was crazy, and there's more rivalry in this Omaha versus Ford Madison match anyway. Like, these are two fan bases that don't like each other. That atmosphere is going to be banana land.
The one thing in terms of hope for Madison and hope for the rest of League One in terms of this run for Omaha is that they don't keep a lot of clean sheets. So the one sort of watch out, and the maybe where you're like, how sustainable is all this, is they win a lot of 1-goal games, and they win while conceding. So there is a little bit of a vulnerability there where, on the flip side, when you're talking about the championship and talking about Bob Lilly's Riverhounds, you just don't feel that like, could the penny drop and, suddenly they're losing games. This one, Omaha, they are a little more able to be got at defensively, although the last couple of games they've obviously shut down some pretty good teams. But
the thing is, though, is that League One is just a higher scoring league. And, we kind of talked about this with Fuego, where, we don't like to say that goalkeeping is bad because it's, sometimes you have these matches where it just doesn't work out, or it's one of those things that sometimes there is a discrepancy, or, your back line is just allowing you to become target practice, right? But the Golden Glove winner, which is probably going to be Sean Lewis, is going to be giving up almost a goal a game, right? That's the kind of environment that League One is in anyway. So I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, if you're allowing around a goal a game, or even just a little bit above that, you're an above average defense in League One, which is kind of ridiculous to say. So I don't know. It just feels like goals just kind of happen in League One anyway, which also kind of feeds into chaos ball that we do fall in love with when it comes to League One. So I don't know. I think that's all the matches we have to predict, as we are on a longer show. Who has some USL thoughts to get out there? Anything?
I
Good.
I am looking forward to watching the playoffs for a second year in a row as a neutral spectator. And I'm mentally trying to get in that right headspace and it's
I'm just going to just pat myself on the back of after 30 match weeks of saying playing Agudelo as a cam. They finally did it, and suddenly Legion are playing well, which crazy how that works. Anyway, these last few matches have been fun to watch, and going against Charleston, I'm super excited to watch that one because I want to see how they face off against Charleston because there is just a part of me that just still likes watching Charleston play anyway. And also, if Legion played Charleston in the playoffs in like 2 weeks, it's an excuse for me to go to Charleston and take a vacation, which kind of rooting for that.
Charleston is right in that pocket where they have nothing to play for in this one. So I wonder how rotated Bierman goes.
Probably pretty rotated if I had to guess. I mean, they're also when's international? How much of internationals being pulled away from this is too because Fidel just got named to that final roster for U17. Is Augie being pulled as well? Because this is that weird time of year where international stuff is happening, but is it?
Shrug. I have no idea. Yeah.
I don't know. I follow the USL and like nothing else because loser. Anyway, unless we have any more USL thoughts, final thoughts of the night. Let's start with Phil.
Well, in terms of non-soccer stuff, obviously MLB playoffs going on right now, and I joked about watching as a neutral spectator. I literally joked on the timeline yesterday about like I rooted for my team to make the playoffs for 162 games this season, and then ended up ultimately relieved that they missed the playoffs because I don't have to put myself through that. From just an emotional standpoint, like watching Braves Phillies last night. Anyone with a vested interest, which I'm assuming maybe Kaylor might have.
No, I'm a Reds fan.
Oh,
Reds
that's
fan.
right. That's right. I knew that. But anyways, like anyone with a vested interest in that game, just like the levels of emotion that people go through watching that and putting myself back in their shoes, I was thankful to have a little bit of just be able to watch and just be like, wow, that was really amazing, and not have a vested interest in what was happening because my God, the heart attacks that must have been going on in Philadelphia and Atlanta last night.
Also, what a double play to end the freaking game.
It's wild.
Just gross. John?
Yeah, double header here. One, happy to have hockey back opening night tonight.
Yes.
Yotes in action Friday, which we might be not terrible, which is something. And then, other things, since I missed the show last week, I got to see Maestro, the new Bradley Cooper movie about Leonard Bernstein, which was completely awesome at New York Film Festival. Shout out. And first time going to Lincoln Center here. So great venue, cool place. Yeah.
How was that? Like, how was the movie?
I thought the movie was great. I thought the venue was completely amazing. Yeah, great time.
What I mean, just wondering, what did it focus on more, like his actual like being the conductor, or was it more on his writing?
More on his personal life and the fact that he was a bit of a promiscuous fella.
Oh, most people in music are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's interesting because going to music school and stuff, the concept of like a lot of those guys, you just kind of get these preconceived like notions or whatever. You find out a lot of stuff. Like I cannot stand listening to any orchestra conducted by Bernstein. Just cannot stand him. I hate his musical interpretations, but I know a lot of people adore him, which, you know, it's just one of those things. I think it's awful at times, but I know other people that are obsessed with him. And it's just one of those weird things that you end up forming opinions on, and that does not matter. So, yeah, it's one of those, I guess, almost like movie directors and like the way that people take film or like books to film. It's like, well, I wouldn't have done that. I hated that, and somebody else adapted, did an adaptation another way. Anyway, speaking of music school and I guess doing stuff like that, my final thought, I went through all the ranges of emotions the other day, where I had a child tell me that, well, she asked me when the old music teacher was coming back, and I said they're not coming back. I'm the music teacher now, and she said, well, she was like, well, that sucks. I hate you. And was like, I can't wait for the music teacher to come back. I hate you, basically. And then a few hours later, I was told by high schoolers that they want me to be their new football coach because they saw me throw a football 40 yards because they were like, you throw ball far, which means you should be our new head coach. And I'm like, what a range of emotions of I hope you get fired, I hate you, to you should be our football coach. And weird range of emotions that happen when teaching sometimes.
I could throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
Right over them mountains.
Just a very, very topical Napoleon Dynamite reference for everyone.
Never gets old.
No. Like guys toss me a football and they're like, how far can you throw it? And like, that's one of my few party tricks. I throw objects far, like not even that far. It's like the quarterback on the team can throw it farther than me, but they were like, the music teacher knows what football is. Whoa. Crazy. So, but yeah, that was my last week just dealing with all that. So yeah. Last night our high school band played at a Pee-wee football game, which these are 10-year-olds playing football, and there were like 1,000 people there.
Jeez, I love the South.
Central Valley wishes that they could have what 10-year-old football has.
Oh, God.
And with that, here's Alan's voice. Am I right?
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.